Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot. I am a real-world airline pilot, but in today's video we're taking a look at the upcoming Captain Sim Heinkel HE 111 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. This aircraft is pretty soon to be released, and it is a representation of a very well-known aircraft from World War II, the Heinkel HE 111. This is a medium manoeuvrable bomber, obviously used by the Luftwaffe during World War II. It originally started out as a high-speed airliner was the idea, the fastest airliner was the idea for it, but then of course being turned into this military variant. It's a very recognisable aeroplane because it was produced all throughout the war, becoming pretty redundant towards the end of the war, but it was certainly produced in vast numbers, 6,500 built in total, which is an astonishing number. Has a very distinctive design with slightly swept wings and fully retracted landing gear, and of course that big plexiglass canopy. It is a very recognisable shape indeed. In today's video we'll take it for a full flight and give it a spin from cold and dark, as it were, and you can see for yourself what this simulation brings and see if it's something that might interest you. We're going to be taking it for a flight, of course, starting out in Hamburg, and I will be flying this as a preview version, so this is not the final release build, this is a preview version, but I'll be flying it in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Right, let's get started. The Heinkel HE 111 is recognisable, a very recognisable aircraft and shape. And there's a reason for that. There were a lot built and it was manufactured throughout the entire war. So the first ones were being built in 1935, but it continued to be manufactured through to 1944, with a total of over 6,500 aircraft built. About 5,600 of those were during the war. An absolutely astonishing number of aeroplanes if you think how many that actually adds up to, plus of course all the other aircraft being manufactured. Absolutely a staggering number. It's a very recognisable silhouette as a result, and it is in many ways it looks like a fast machine designed to be quick, and that was indeed the original intention. Fastest passenger airliner in the world at the time, but of course that made it quite a handy aeroplane to then sell to the military when the time came. It has a really open cockpit, as you can see at the front there, with all the plexiglass going around the nose, which we'll see once we get into the flight deck and into the air. But it gives a really unique view. You can actually recognise this sort of aeroplane straight away just from the cockpit view. As we come around, this is, I believe, a H variant, as confusing as that is, which is just to do with the engines. There are loads and loads of variants of this machine because, like any aircraft developed during World War II, it was developed and adjusted for all different reasons. But yeah, this is, I believe, that variant. It's not specialized in any particular way. It's a medium maneuverable bomber, as we saw earlier. So you have your bomb bay doors underneath here, big tail as you would expect to need on an aircraft with two piston engines. I believe these engines are rotating in the same direction as well. We will check that, but certainly some significant yaw required, or yaw control required, in case of an engine failure. They have kept them as close as possible to the middle, you can see there, but it's all sort of a compromise because you need stability with those landing gear, and they fit pretty well under the engine pods. But there we go. Yeah, it is a very recognisable machine. As you move around the outside, just trying to give you a bit of an idea of what the modelling looks like and the details and the textures. So yeah, hopefully this is giving you an idea. We run along the upper surface of the wing. You see lots of bits of sort of paint flaking off, and what I really like, this is always my favourite thing in Flight Simulator, is you seem to really be able to get like a sense of the rippling in the metal along the top edge surfaces, which is something you see. I once flew in a DC-3 and I remember seeing bits of the metal sort of warping and vibrating as it flew along that upper wing. They're quite a distinctive feature, and you can see more of where the paint's worn off. Lots of decals, as I call them, but sort of printed texts and labels and warnings around as we go across the outside. I'm not entirely sure what this sort of viewpoint is. I'm assuming it was to fit a turret for a defensive position facing out the back. That's my assumption. I don't know for sure. And then we've got communications antennas. Navigating is pretty difficult in this machine, as we'll find out shortly. But yeah, there you go. Landing gear, quite simple mechanism really. It's amazing how complex landing gear has become, but in this time, big chunky tyre, big metal structure that sort of collapsed in on itself and brought the wheel up into the wheel well. Here we are on the cockpit. Just look at that view out the windows. This is something that was noted by a British test pilot who got hold of one of these during the war, Eric Brown. And yeah, it's Eric comments on the fact that the space within the cockpit area and the great degree of visual sighting afforded by the plexiglass paneling were regarded as positive factors. One important provision in relation to weather conditions was that should either bright sunshine or rainstorms be encountered, the visibility could be dangerously compromised by either glare throwback or lack of good sighting. So it's a fantastic thing to have all this glass. It's an amazing amount of visibility, and it must have made for quite a sensation when flying, especially as you sort of climbed up through clouds or above clouds. I mean, it must have been fantastic. But there's a reason most airplanes don't do this, and that is that, yeah, you're going to get a huge amount of bright light in your face and glare, and it could become very difficult. It was also needed to open up this window when taxiing in bad weather or rain to see out, because, of course, without wipers, rain would just block or obscure all this. So imagine if condensation was all over it, something like that. Yeah, it could really make life a bit more difficult. Right, let's get the aeroplane powered on. Now, Captain Sim do provide a manual with this aircraft, which is not a huge manual. It's very straightforward. It has the normal procedures, and it has a description of the flight deck, so you know what switch you're looking for, because of course everything is labeled correctly in German, which can make things a bit tricky if you don't speak German, because it's not immediately obvious what's what. But crucially, favorite feature, we do have the checklist in here. So we even have the engine start checklist, which does start actually with the, there is a pre-flight procedure, which would be for the external inspection, check the fuel and oil, hydraulics, electrical systems, and then prepare the cockpit and emergency equipment. But we can pretty much go into our engine start checklist in here. I think that's going to be a nice way to get going and get flying. Now, we haven't got chocks in, so I'm going to put those in, and I can do that through here. A little menu tucked away behind us, and in here we can have tie downs, tire chocks, cargo. Let's put it all. Let's have a look outside with everything on. Ladder, antenna. Oh, we've done weaponry. Oh, obviously we can't have antennas at the same time. Let's have a look. There we go, we've got some chocks on the main gear over on that left-hand side one. Ladder to get up into the flight deck. Some cargo hanging around the airplane ready to go in. Nice. I always like these extra bits of animation added in, or modelling. It's even tied down, which is the sort of thing you need, because this airplane is sat on the ground ready for takeoff effectively. A strong headwind there, and it would just start lifting up quite happily. Okay, so let's remove... we'll keep the chocks in. Get rid of everything else. Great. Airplane's chocked. We're going to start up. So we'll bring up our checklists. Engine start checklist. Master battery on. That's over here. Clunk. Things start to come to life. Water radiator retracts. I don't know. Oil radiators retract. I think that's the retracted position. This is where it gets tricky. Left and right pumps P1 and 2. So then let's go forward a step. P1. Left fuel pumps P1 plus 2. That's all the way forwards. There we go. Right. Okay. And right fuel pump P1 plus 2. Excellent. And the left engine magnetos M1 plus 2. Magnetos are up here, so we want to have all the magnetos running, so we'll set them all on. Good. Propellers forwards. Propeller levers are in a pretty standard place next to our throttles over here. All the way forward and all the way forwards. Left engine starter, push. Where is the left engine starter? There it is. That seems to have worked. Right engine. Has it worked? Doesn't sound great, but it's stabilized. 600 RPM, just above idle. Let's start the right engine. There we go. Engine's running. Awesome. Next is the takeoff checklist. So that's it. Pretty straightforward, but it feels legitimate. It's a series of things to do. What a machine. Big plane it feels like when you're sat in here. Yeah, so the wingspan on the HE 111 is 22.6 meters. First airplane or first airliner I flew was the Dash 8 Q400. That had a wingspan, or has a wingspan of 28.4. So it's a reasonable size. Max takeoff weight, gross weight 12 tons, or max takeoff weight, sorry, 14 tons. So yeah, pretty heavy machine if it wants to be. Right, let's get taxiing. So we need to remove that chock that's now in the way. Give that here, and chocks, they can go. Now our engine instruments are all sort of on this panel on the right. So this is where we're looking for monitoring the engines. I don't quite know why some of these are sideways, but you get a sense of the RPM over here, and it could be that it's an easier format to read, or they thought it worked better. And then you've got your, I think this is the oil temperature down here, maybe this is the coolant temperature, or vice versa. This is all in the manual, but there's a lot to take in on a new airplane when you can't read any of the gauges. It's one thing to know roughly where they are, and it's another thing to actually have to remember it all. Let's see, let's have a quick check before I go too far. So the bottom is the engine oil temperature, so this is engine oil temperature, and this one is the engine coolant temperature, which makes sense. And we can adjust those accordingly. We have some cowls that we can adjust, cowl flaps and so on over here. We also can put on some lights. I'm just going to put them all on because, again, I can't read what these labels say. But if you spent some time in this airplane, this would all start to make a bit more sense, I'm sure. Right, we're going to have to taxi. Our friend here is going to have to move out of the way. Oh, it's going to look like a Indiana Jones scene. So we'll release the brake. Bit of power. There we go. Bit of rudder. Now, it's actually not a bad airplane to taxi. It takes a bit of oomph to get around this first bend, as you can see, as most airplanes would. Looks great in that sunshine, doesn't it? Really, really looks like the part with the metal and the texturing and the ripples, like I say. Come on, airplane, let's go. Taking more room to get moving than I imagined. Probably would benefit from some asymmetric thrust here. But yeah, once you do, it really moves. I'm sure our colleague there was fine. Right. Now we're going a bit too fast, and we are going all over the place, and then that's what happens if you apply the brakes too quickly. Worth remembering. Excellent. Out we go. By the way, there is a sunshade up here which you can remove if you want extra light and visibility. Here's our fuel gauges. So we do have enough fuel for our plan today. This is for controlling the bomb bay doors. Most of the switches work. Some things are just modelled visually, so they're there but they're not functioning because they're just systems that I don't think can be simulated, or you won't be able to do anything in any meaningful way with them. I know you can open these cowls up here. We'll give that a go in flight. And let's taxi out. We're going to take off in that direction, which means we'll be heading sort of let's try and get this right. Northeast? This is another fascinating thing about this airplane, is the gauges. They are quite different, and we'll see how. No surprise here with the taxi checklist. First of all, control surfaces. Now this yoke is a bit in the way, but I can lower it down, which is great because I can get to my autopilot controls up here. Yes, it has an autopilot. And we're full left, full right. Have a look out the wing, check those ailerons moving. Yes, they are. And full up, full down. And we've already done our rudder as part of our taxiing. Look at that, the way your feet are just looking through the glass. You feel like if you slipped your foot, you'd smash through the glass down, but I'm sure you wouldn't actually reach it. Like I say, quite a big machine. Exterior lights, we've got them all on. Flaps at 30 degrees. Now, the flap indicator is here. So one stage, I think, is going to get us to 30 degrees. Yep, that's 30 degrees. Airspeed increase, lo and behold, that's how you take off. Yep, and then gear up, flaps up, climb, airspeed on 8240. Pretty straightforward checklist, like I say, mainly just to get the airplane up and running. Now, navigation is a challenge in this airplane. Basically, you're going to be navigating visually. I'm not sure whether these airplanes, what sort of radar navigation aids they were fitted with, and if anything like that is still in operation that you can use today. So yeah, you have a compass and you can look outside and you can dead reckon and you can time things, but I suspect more than a few of us will be using the rather handy inbuilt VFR map or the GPS. So here we go. Give us an idea of where we are. Just a quick example on the outside of those, sort of rippling effect in the metal. I know I keep talking about it, but it's a big part of what makes these things feel legitimate in simulators. And yeah, that light really showing it off there. Right, let's try not to tip over. Gentle on the brakes. Oh, it's hard with the Xbox controller. It'd be easy if you have pedals. Right, the engines are starting to get a little bit warm over here. I can see our either coolant or oil, one of them is getting a bit high. So let's get ourselves into the air, get some airflow running over those engines. I think that will help it out a lot. I'm going to go full power for takeoff, as typically, well, not all piston engines do, but I think that's going to work for today. I want to make sure we definitely get in the air nice and cleanly. One thing I have already experienced with this aircraft is there is significant yaw when the tail comes off the ground, and you lose the friction of that tail wheel. So once the tail wheel comes up, I need to be ready with the yaw, so we will do that. Right, there we go. Now another thing is, it actually helps to move slightly to the right. That instrument panel is astonishingly in the way. So there we go, we'll go here, powering up. The tail will rise fairly quickly. Everything stabilised, everything looking reasonable over here. The temperatures have risen a bit more, but I think that might calm down unless that's the coolant. We'll go full power. There's the tail rise and there's the swing. So you're going to be ready for that with the rudder. Oh, and be gentle with it. And let's just get off the ground. Tricky. And these airplanes are tricky. Tail dragging piston airplanes are tricky airplanes to manoeuvre. Great rate of climb though once we get up and underway. See, we barely need any runway. Let's raise the landing gear. Watch that fold in. There's sort of a lot of umming and ahhing, and then in it goes. And I think it fully folds away, unlike some other airplanes like the DC-3. Yep, there it goes. Very neat. Again, look at that fantastic view. Let's get it trimmed out, and let's accelerate the airplane. I'm going to get at least 200 knots. I say knots, kilometers an hour. It's not doing 200 knots. Yeah, it's a challenge. It will be a real challenge on a windy day, this airplane, I can tell you that. Okay, that's just reaching 200. Let's bring the flaps in. Keep trimming for a climb. Don't want to go any lower, please. There we go. Bring the power back a little bit, because all the temperatures are going mad. Sort of come to a climb power, and then this is our RPM, so you can see the RPM is over there. Bring it back just a tad. $2,500. I don't know if that's true. That's just a number I'm going for because I can see it on the gauge. These are very, very sensitive, and it's a fine art to get them just right because they aren't visible really whether they're lined up or not, especially up there. So yeah, that can be a challenge. Note as well that we're flying with the throttles on the left-hand side in sort of the first officer setup, right hand on the yoke, the throttles with the left hand. They're very high up and far away over there. I imagine you'd be sat higher than we realise in this airplane. And there we go, we are underway. I will keep an eye on those temperatures. We can open up some cows and so on. If I get this right, I think this will help something. Temperature's down. Good. Now, navigating, we have a compass in front of us here, so we're currently pointing at heading 010 degrees, and I can confirm that if I bring up the VFR map. We've also got a rate of climb over here. This is our airspeed. And this is... Yes, this, of course, is the altimeter, but done in kilometres, if you can believe that. That is quite something. A kilometre meter. Good, and like I say, you can see the heading drifting there. This is our artificial horizon, effectively, but it's not very conventional, and you'll see why. If I was to... And we're getting a slight yaw here. I'm imagining my RPMs aren't right. Yeah, look, the right engine's slightly low. Just have to get these really nicely balanced, otherwise you'll just be constantly slipping. And you have to use the rudder trim, but like I say, very hard. There we go. Okay, that's looking better. Yeah, so this is our artificial horizon, and you can see if I bank the airplane to the left, all it does is put this needle left, and then our slip indicator goes left as well. And this is our actual pitch, so if I pitch the airplane up, what this line is representing is the horizon. So effectively beneath this is brown, above this is blue, and then you hold it there, and we are in a very steep climb. It's not very sensitive, it's sort of the opposite. It's surprisingly relaxed about things, so yeah, it's not an easy gauge to be used to. Now, I promised an autopilot as well, and that does exist. We can set our heading on the autopilot over here, and I don't think you can set an altitude. You can just engage it and it will maintain the altitude. So there we go, autopilot's now on, and it should, I'm hoping, stabilise that nose. It's pretty clunky. I'm hoping it will stop accelerating. We're a bit out of trim, you see, which has not helped things. And then I can adjust the heading. So if I put this onto 030 there, the airplane should turn to 030. Now this sounds, you know, that's what it does, pretty basic, but actually incredibly useful, and it's going to enable you to do some serious cruising in this machine. So now I've still got climb power sort of set, or it's only a slightly reduced power. The temperatures are just about okay. Might need to open up our, this is for the radiators, I think, so let's get that open. These sit on top. This is this little flap here, so we're just drawing a bit more air through the engines. But yeah, doing a speed of 340 kilometers an hour gives us an actual knots airspeed of 183. So that's a pretty serious speed. You'll see as well the autopilot doing a great job heading 030, and we are sitting at 1.5 kilometers up, 1,500 meters, I think. Yeah, quite something. Like I say, changing altitude not possible through the autopilot. All you would do in that case is disconnect and add power. I'm still sort of at climb power, so I don't have much, but if I disconnect the autopilot and then go full power, the airplane will naturally start to climb, and you'll see that here. Quite a high service ceiling on this aircraft. It could go all the way up to, I think, around about 20,000 odd feet. Let me find out for you. 21,300 feet. Yep. Taking about 20 minutes to get to 17,000 feet. So yeah, pretty powerful thing. Now it does have a tendency to drop a wing apparently on final approach in a landing configuration. I don't really want to test that out too much, but I do want to try out the stalling here because it is relatively manoeuvrable. We've got a bit of speed going here, so you can see it's become a little bit more sluggish. So let's bring the power right back. I'm beginning to think those engines are counter-rotating. It's pretty hard to tell in Flight Simulator, just from the fact that you would expect yaw otherwise. By the way, one feature I do like, or that's being represented well, is adverse yaw. Big adverse yaw on these aircraft, because look at the size of those ailerons. They are big things. Adverse yaw is the tendency for an airplane to yaw, i.e. point the nose in the opposite direction to the way you're banking the aircraft. So if I bank the airplane to the left, what I want is for the nose to come left as well, like this, and I'm turning into the turn. But what adverse yaw does is when I bank left, the nose actually goes right, and you can see that with the slip indicator there. The reason this happens is because the aileron that goes down, i.e. the wing that goes up, generates more drag than the wing that goes down, because it's generating more lift, and lift itself generates drag on an airframe. So it pulls that wing in the opposite direction. You don't see it so much these days. Yaw dampers have sort of counteracted it. Swept-wing jet aircraft don't suffer it as much, and then we have smaller ailerons. But in this sort of design, yeah, and it's a noticeable effect. If I do that, you can see that that ball moves to the right. It wants the nose to go further right than it is, but the nose is sort of hanging around in the middle, and then it drops when I let go of the aileron. Quite nice to see it simulated like that. Let's give it a bit of a stall before I lose too much altitude. I'll bring the nose up. I don't even know if it has a stall warner. Some great sound effects though. There's some juddering. And there it goes. Quite an aggressive stall, and there's a bit of a wing drop as well. Let's get some power on. Let's try that once more. I wonder if we can get the wing to drop. That would be quite a challenging stall recovery, that one. No stall warner whatsoever, just the rumble. You just have to feel it. Let's hold it there, hold it there, hold it there. Yeah. Nasty. Quite a nasty stall. Not bad. Doesn't enter a spin straight away, but there we go. Right, let's recover from that nice and gently again. Get some power on. And one more thing to show you on this airplane. Let's just get it trimmed out. In fact, let's let the autopilot take the strain. I'll bring the power back a little bit to give it a fighting chance. And autopilot, thank you very much. Fantastic feature. Is the bomb bay doors. So as you can see, that's all it takes. Just a small movement of that switch. But there they are, open up down there. Now, I haven't seen any way to actually bring actual weapons in. Because if I tick weapons on there, I think that's just added. That's added the gun turret on top. Yep, there it is. As a sort of defensive measure. Makes sense. Good. Let's close that up again. So, like I say, some of these switches may move, but they're not necessarily simulating things. Oh yeah, there we go. We have a nose gun as well. Oh, I don't like it now. That's ruining my view out the front. Let's get rid of those. Right. Yeah, and imagine, by the way, sitting out here. Now, of course, this was probably used for reconnaissance and aiming, but if you were just a passenger, this would be one view and a half, wouldn't it? Sat out here in between those engines in all this plexiglass. What a view. What a view you'd have. You can as well bring this seat over. As far as I can tell, there's no other seating positions in the airframe. You can't get into the cabin. I've not been able to, certainly at the time of making this video. But there we go. Like I say, definitely preferable to move slightly to the right so you can actually see where you're going, but a fantastic view when you do. Right, I'm going to try for this airfield in front of us, EDXT. Let's see if we can spot it out the windows. It's a very visual machine. Let's move forwards. I mean, if we can't see it from this airplane, then we're never going to be able to see it. Start bringing the power back a little bit, let the autopilot take the strain. That's glorious view, really fantastic. It's a shame what it was ultimately used for, because this would have been quite a passenger experience. Right, we're heading straight over. I have no idea what this airfield actually is, but I'm hoping we can fit our aeroplane into it. Beginning to have doubts about that. Okay, no surprise, anyone who knows that airfield ADXT that we're not going to fit in there, so we're going to EDHL Lubeck Airfield, so should be there fairly shortly. And let's have a look at our checklist, see what we need to do for landing. It's going to be autopilot off, water radiator retract, oil radiators retract, and the flaps go to 60 degrees, gear down, And we're approaching about 150 to 160 kilometers an hour, landing 120 to 130. Okay, seems pretty reasonable. I'm just wondering if I can actually make anything happen with these. I'm not sure where these radiators actually retract or extend from, or if they... Oh, there we go. Yes, it's this radiator here. Right, okay, so I've had that in the wrong position then, haven't I? They need to be retracted. And let's try that one. That's presumably for the other side. Yeah. That'll be retracted. Okay. That's fine. And these will be retracted as well. Okay, makes sense. I'll retract them now. I'm worried that what that might do to our temperature, so let's bring the power back. Okay, arriving at the airfield then. What? I cannot get over this view. I do need to get rid of this little marker though. There we go. There's the runway. Good. Coming into sight. So we can clear out this and let's bring it in for a landing. So autopilot comes off. Pretty straightforward. Powering back and we'll go to max RPM. A little bit of power on and we'll start slowing down from 300 kilometers an hour. I don't know what, I mean, a normal circuit height is about 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet. So that's going to be what, divided by 3. So for sort of 300 meters we're looking for, so 0.3 of a kilometer. We're currently at 0.7. And I think this is roughly sea level, this airfield. Assuming that wasn't a lake, but it might have been a lake. Actually, probably was a lake. We were just over, but there we go. So we'll do a big loop round. We'll land on runway 25, I think. So I'll just do a sort of lazy circle to land here. Right, there's 0.5. So start shadowing out. Keep trimming back. First stage of flap in. Good. That's really messed up. The airplane's slowing down very quickly here, so getting some power in. Still at half a kilometre. Keep a descent going. And we want 150. Let me just do one last check of those speeds to make sure I have it right. So 60 degrees of flat, 150 to 160. Reducing from there, so 150 to 160. Look at that. Gentle descending turn now. Okay, let's retract those last radiators. Oh. We're down at 1,000 feet. Give it the next stage of flap. Bit of power. Landing it down. Oh, I've taken that turn a bit wrong there. Let's bring it round. Speed is... they've not got great scale. That must be 100s. That must be 150. So we actually don't want to get any slower than this, which could prove tricky when I go to the full flap. Oh no, I think we're at full flap. Yeah, that looks like 60, so we're not going to go any further than that. Still a bit high, so throttling back. So yeah, we're doing 150. That's good. So actually we can leave it in trim there. So now it's a case of just gentle power changes. Keep that runway in the nose. Big nose cone. Shadowing out the descent. I'm not sure what the unit is on that vertical speed indicator. I can't believe it would be feet per minute given that nothing else is in knots or feet. Okay, gonna have to move out slightly more. You can see a bit of over controlling. I'm going to blame the Xbox controller for that, but yeah, you don't need to be moving it as much as you're seeing on the screen here. Getting a little bit high again, and you can see that nose yawing as I put any aileron. It's amazing, very well replicated effect. That adverse yaw. Okay, coming down now into the flare for landing. back to idle on the throttles, holding it off, with the left rudder. There's touchdown. Holding that nose up, don't want to tip in, and like I say, until that tail wheel's down, it's pretty challenging on the yaw. Oh dear, come on, there we go. Okay, we got it back under control. What happens is it suddenly becomes sensitive once that tail wheel's down. There we go. Not an experience we have much in Microsoft Flight Simulator, flying a World War II bomber. Classic toe brakes. Yeah, it will be a lot easier if you have pedals. Oof, there we go. Made it. So that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. This has been the Captain Sim Heinkel HE 111 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've really enjoyed my time with this, although this is not a review. This is just a sort of a preview, so you can see the airplane and decide if it's something that would interest you. Some standout features for me, though, have been the flight model. I think has been really great, and of course, I absolutely love that plexiglass canopy at the front. I think that is really fantastic. It's great to be able to fly around in Microsoft Flight Simulator and soak in the views and the fantastic scenery. It's not going to be much good for navigating around or flying approaches into modern commercial airports, but you're going to have fun with it if you enjoy just, like I say, taking in the scenery, doing a bit of VFR navigation, or just getting the chance to experience this sort of aeroplane in Microsoft Flight Simulator, which we don't see much. I also think the handling and the flight model is very good. I'm very pleased with that. The stalling is challenging. The ailerons provide quite a fair bit of adverse yaw, as you would expect, and the takeoffs and landings are challenging as a result of that tail dragger configuration. So yeah, really, really nice to see the bits model that I would have expected to be there, and that makes it a good challenge, but totally flyable. It is not overly difficult. It is a good bit of fun to fly in the sim. That's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. There'll be plenty more videos, guides, live streams coming on the channel soon, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see those. We'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.